What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the wingsuit because this is a somewhat important item in Chapter 7 that can get you into a lot of trouble. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below what you think of the wingsuit, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So, overall, the wingsuit is not a mobility item that I enjoy using very much, but with how this season plays out, it's likely something that you're going to need to use at some point, so it is worth kind of knowing this information, even if it isn't your preferred item to use, because this season, the shockwave spawn rate has already been nerfed twice, and there aren't any NPCs on the island that sell shockwaves, and you can't buy them from vending machines. So shockwaves are a somewhat inconvenient item to get at times. One of my favorite mobility items this season is the Forsaken Blade Katana, but there aren't very many katanas on the map. I believe there's 5 portals that can spawn, and then those portals themselves are just random whether or not they end up being there game to game. So there's not a lot of katanas to go around. There is a purple one that you can get from eliminating the Bride NPC, but overall, there's not very many katanas on the island either. Cars also do not have the greatest spawn rate. And in ranked mode, there are no cars and there's no Forsaken Blade Katanas as of the time I'm recording this video. I think it's possible in the future the Forsaken Blade comes to the general loot pool, but these kind of scarcities of other mobility items puts you in situations where there's going to be times where you have to use the wingsuit, or it's ideal for you to use the wingsuit, even if it isn't your preferred choice. And if you're playing team game modes especially, that is like even more so true, because it being, hard to get a katana or hard to get shockwaves, if you need to supply 4 people with mobility, some of them are probably going to end up using the wingsuit. So I think it is very much worth knowing how to use this item. It is a pretty high risk item because in most instances, somebody with decent aim is just going to be able to beam you and full on eliminate you out of the air, or put so much damage on you that they have a lot of pressure in that fight and it's easier for them to close it out. The wingsuit has a slow kind of animation to start it. You get launched into the air, and then you're able to glide. And this is a very momentum-based item. If you kind of just go straight for too long, you start to lose momentum and go really slow. So it's best to kind of go up and down while flying to kind of maintain and like regenerate some of your momentum, basically. And if you just like spam look up and down really fast, you can kind of go pretty quickly, pretty consistently, and go mostly straight. But that hasn't felt the most consistent to me at times. There's been days where it feels great. There's days where it feels slow, just spamming up and down. But either way, it's an item where you need to manage the momentum of, because that is directly impacting how fast you're moving. And the faster you're moving, not only are you going to travel quicker, but it's going to be harder for enemies to beam you, although not impossible. People going pretty quick, I think, are still pretty beamable, depending on like the angle you have on them. Because you are very exposed when using this, and as I said, very beamable, it's more of like a setup or like positional mobility item than anything else. If you're trying to push an enemy straight on, that's probably not going to go well. And if you're trying to just fly across the map and go wherever you please, that also probably isn't going to go well. I think going from like one piece of cover to another can be okay in a lot of instances, especially if you can kind of like see that area and know that there's not anybody there yet. But just trying to fly high over the open map will often end up with you taking a lot of damage because anybody in that general area can just like look up and see you. If I'm pushing an enemy, I want to try to fly to a piece of cover or position of advantage near them rather than just going straight onto them. With shockwaves or the blade, a lot of times you can just like full send directly at somebody and it will work out for you. But if you do this with the wingsuit, you are very, very vulnerable. I'll have a clip on screen now of someone who has me pretty weak. They decide to fly straight at me with the wingsuit, and they take a lot of damage. And not only do they take a lot of damage, but that period of time where they land, they're so slow that it's just like very easy for me to turn this fight or just leave if I wanted to. I have ample time to shockwave away as they're getting close to me. So instead of trying to go directly onto somebody, try to go to like a piece of cover near them, and ideally fly in such a way to where they won't have line of sight on you. If you fly straight up and then try to dive down, you might be more exposed than if you stay kind of low in that instance. Every kind of situation depends on like the angles the enemy has on you and the cover around that area. But if you can fly in a somewhat way that's protected and then get to a piece of cover near them and then play the fight out that way. I feel like that's going to work a lot better for you than just going right on somebody. If they're like super weak, then maybe you can go right on them. Everything is situational. But as a general rule, if you're using this to push, I think small amounts of flying and just going to a piece of cover near them is better than going directly at them, or very long flights. I want to be in and out of the air as fast as possible. If you're going through an area that you know is kind of dead, then, you know, maybe you can fly a bit more brazenly. But I think one of the worst things that can happen to you, as I've kind of already outlined, is like they engage on you while you're just flying, and then there's not much you can really do about it. So if you are going to go through an area that you don't really know if it's clear or not, or like a POI on the map that's typically hot, I think it is best to kind of land somewhere on the outskirts of that or somewhere safe, and then play from there rather than just trying to like gamble go through. So like once I get close to the POI, I'll kind of land. And then if a fight happens, I feel like I'm more able to make decisions in that fight and not just so locked into like, oh, I was flying, I'm taking a bunch of damage. And one of the worst things I've seen a lot of people do with this wingsuit is they're getting shot and then they just keep flying. And what would have been like maybe like 80 to 100 damage quickly becomes 200 damage because they're like somewhat stubborn and they want to just like keep flying away. I think it's also like somewhat of a panic thing. They're like, okay, I'm getting shot, I need to get out of here. So they just keep flying. But a lot of times if you are getting shot, I think it's best to just try to land at whatever the nearest piece of cover is. And when you dive straight down like that, if you already had momentum, you'll have some decent speed in doing so most of the time, I feel like. The one time where this wouldn't really be true is if you were about to escape. Like, let's just say hypothetically you're going near a mountain and the player that's shooting you is no longer going to have line of sight on you here shortly, then maybe you can like stick the flight there. But if it's going to be a bit before you're actually safe from this player, you probably just want to try to get to some sort of cover and then play the fight out from there. Maybe heal, look for them to push you, get beams on them while they're doing so. And then maybe that's a fight that you can turn, especially if they try to wingsuit onto you. They're going to be very vulnerable, as I already touched on. When you are going with this item, a lot of times if you aren't maintaining the momentum perfectly, you will start to really slow down. And I think at that point, it's usually best to just land, especially if you're already close to the ground. This is another situation where I've seen a lot of people really mess this up, where they're gliding so slowly, but they're still just like staying in the air rather than just diving down and getting out of their wingsuit. Once you're going incredibly slow, being up in the air like that just exposes you to more angles. And this item is very, very bad in panic situations. I'm sure many of us have experienced this, where you go to push an enemy and then they start the wingsuit activation when you already have them weak, and then you just kill them while they're in the animation of like ramping up their wingsuit. It's not good in like heat of the moment situations like that, especially if you need to escape from an enemy, or very late game rotations. I've had some games where the final player tries to like waits until the last possible second to try to wingsuit into zone, and I feel like that is also just not a play that's likely to work out. So especially if it's like a 1v1 and you're doing that, trying to plan ahead and not put yourself in those panic situations with the wingsuit, I think is important. And that's why it's also best to carry some sort of other mobility item for those important situations. If you have a wingsuit and shockwaves, then you can kind of use the wingsuit for the less important moments or like the situations where it works somewhat well, and then have your shockwaves as a backup for like, okay, I need to get out of here ASAP, or like, I really want to chase this person. That's another thing it's not very good at, is like chasing enemies, because of the situations I've outlined in this video and how exposed you are. And that's where I've kind of found myself using the wingsuit most this season, is when I don't get a katana and I'm somewhat low on shockwaves. Like, let's say I loot my POI and I have a wingsuit and 2 shockwaves. 2 shockwaves is not great, but as I kind of already outlined, using the wingsuit in the less important moments, or kind of just get around a little bit, and saving the shockwaves for the more important moments can help you kind of get by on what would have been less shockwaves. And that's how I've been using it most, is just to kind of be a supplementary mobility item in the less important or the less like critical moments. That way I can save a bit of my shockwaves for the more important or more critical, more like timing of the essence fights. But that's kind of how I view the wingsuit. It's something I will use when I don't get other items I want to have. But my ideal choice is going to be the Forsaken Blade and shockwaves. And if I'm in a situation where like I can choose to carry 2 stacks of shockwaves, then I probably would rather carry 2 stacks of shockwaves and a wingsuit. But oftentimes that's not going to be something that happens. I find that in a lot of instances when I get bad RNG or just, you know, unfortunate spawns, I'm leaving my POI with a wingsuit and 2 shocks, and that is much better than just 2 shockwaves alone as mobility. But let me know down in the comments below what you think of the wingsuit. As always, if you guys did find this video to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.